All right, let's dive into it, everyone. We're going deep on some of the greats behind cartoons. You know, the minds that built those worlds we all love to just kind of get lost in. I found this top 10 best cartoon creators list on the top 10s. It's, well, it got me thinking.
Rankings, they always get people going, huh?
They do. But that's part of the fun, right? Gets the conversation rolling. We're not going to go in order, though. We're going in depth. What connects these creators, What makes their work stand out?
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to just rattle off a list of shows, but what makes a creator tick? That's the good stuff.
Exactly. Like, take Matt Groening, Simpsons, Futurama. The guy's built an empire of laughs.
He really has. I think what people miss sometimes, though, is how he can be so sharp with his satire, but also, like, heartwarming. It's a hard balance to strike.
It is. It's like you're laughing at how messed up things are, but you still feel for the characters, you know?
For sure. And you can't deny his influence, right? So many shows after The Simpsons, you can see that groaning style of humor popping up.
Oh, totally. He kind of set the bar for how animation can comment on society, I think.
Absolutely. But for me, when it comes to just pure visual style, Gendy Tartakovsky, he's in a league of his own.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like Samurai Jack, the look of that show, stark landscapes, that distinct animation style.
It's so cool. And it's intentional, right? It's not just like, oh, this looks cool. It's inspired by.
You think of ukiyo-e, those Japanese woodblock prints.
Ukiyo-e, yeah. I knew there was a connection there.
It's really fascinating, actually. It translates to pictures of the floating world. Basically, there are these woodblock prints popular in Japan way back, 17th to 19th centuries. Everyday life scenes, landscapes, kabuki actors.
I can see that. Bold lines, flat colors, that kind of dynamic energy.
Exactly. And Tartakovsky takes those elements and brings them into Samurai Jack. It creates this unique style that feels both like old and new at the same time.
Yeah, it's timeless. And it's not just how it looks, right? Tartakovsky tells stories in such a minimalist way. Lots of action, visual cues, not always a ton of dialogue.
You're hitting on something really important there. Think of those lightsaber fights in Clone Wars, for example. Barely any words spoken, but the intensity, the emotion, it's all there.
It's all in the movement, the expressions.
Precisely. He trusts his audience to fill in the gaps, and that's part of the magic. And that kind of silent storytelling, it's powerful stuff. You see it in other great animated works, too. Wall-E comes to mind.
Oh, that's such a good example. It's like he's directing your attention with every single frame. You're not just passively watching, you're really experiencing the animation.
Exactly. Now, shifting gears a bit, we got to talk about Pendleton Ward and Adventure Time. I mean, talk about distinct styles.
Oh man, yeah. Adventure Time is like he throws you headfirst into this crazy land of ooh with candy people and talking dogs, and somehow it works.
It really does. And it's not just surface level whimsy either.
Right. Like you get deeper into Adventure Time, and there's loss, trauma, even some existential stuff woven in there. It's like the show grows up alongside its audience.
That's a great point. Starts out lighthearted, then as the characters mature, so do the themes. And, some critics say the humor can be all over the place.
Yeah, I can see that.
A little too random for some tastes, but I think that unpredictability is part of the fun.
It keeps you guessing.
Right. Keeps you on your toes, wondering what's going to come next. And it's interesting to contrast that with, say, Alex Hirsch and Gravity Falls.
Oh yeah, good point.
Hirsch has that blend of humor and heart too, but it's more structured.
Definitely, like a puzzle box, almost.
Exactly. Every episode of Gravity Falls feels like a piece of the puzzle. You're always looking for clues to the bigger mystery. But even with that framework, he still builds these really complex characters, like Grunkle for example.
Oh yeah, Grunkle Stan.
Starts off seeming like this greedy con man, but there's so much more of him. He's surprisingly complex.
I love that about both Ward and Hirsch, though, that ability to make characters that are both hilarious and heartwarming at the same time.
Absolutely. It's like they tap into that feeling of childhood nostalgia, but they also acknowledge all the awkwardness and complexity of growing up.
And they don't shy away from making their characters flawed, right?
Not at all. They can be vulnerable, but mess up even, and I think that's what makes them feel real, especially for viewers who are going through those tough teenage years or dealing with family stuff that's not always perfect.
They make it relatable even in these crazy, fantastical settings. Like, their characters are dealing with real emotions, real problems.
Which makes the funny moments hit harder and the emotional moments hit deeper. And, this kind of leads us to another group of creators who are doing really interesting things with representation and emotional intelligence. This list calls them the newcomers.
It's a good segue, but I gotta say, some of these newcomers have been building amazing worlds for a while now.
That's true. I think the animation world moves fast, and there's always a new generation coming up, pushing the boundaries even further.
It's exciting. Makes you wonder what the future holds for animation, right?
Abs
Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, though, we got to talk about Rebecca Sugar and Steven Universe. I mean, talk about pushing boundaries.
Oh, for sure. What Sugar did with that show is really remarkable. Blending fantasy elements with like real world stuff, especially around identity and acceptance.
It's so well
It
done.
really is. You've got themes of gender, sexuality, mental health, and she tackles them with such depth and sensitivity. You don't see that a lot in, kids animation.
I remember when Steven Universe first came out, it felt so different, like a breath of fresh air.
It was diverse cast of characters, complex relationships, and the whole story just celebrates empathy and emotional intelligence.
It really does. And it connected with people of all ages, too.
Absolutely. It kind of challenged what a kid's show could be. Sugar proved that animation can explore these tough topics, promote inclusivity, and she did it all while building this visually stunning world with great music and characters you actually care about.
And speaking of memorable characters, we've got to give some love to C.H. Greenblatt. I mean, SpongeBob Chowder. His shows are just bursting with personality.
Oh, Greenblatt, he's a master of quirky character, that's for sure. And his style.
It's so unique.
Almost like a throwback to those classic cartoons, exaggerated movements, slapstick humor.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But what sets Greenblatt apart is the heart he injects into it all.
There's a sweetness there, even when it's completely absurd. Like, you're watching Chowder make a total mess of things in the kitchen, but you're rooting for him the whole time.
Exactly. And his visuals are just so, I don't know, it's like watching a moving sketchbook.
Yeah, he's not afraid to experiment, try different textures and stuff.
Gives his shows this really tactile quality. And I don't think we can move on without talking about Craig McCracken. I mean, Powerpuff Girls, that was a phenomenon.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Powerpuff Girls and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. I mean, talk about a masterclass in humor and heart.
What McCracken does so well is he taps into those childhood anxieties, fears, but he does it in a way that's like comforting, empowering even.
It's true, his characters might be dealing with bullies or monsters, but they always find strength in their friendships, their own inner strength.
And let's not forget, he created some of the most iconic female characters in animation history.
The Powerpuff Girls. Tiny superheroes kicking butt and saving the day.
Exactly. And they weren't just strong, they had personality, they had flaws, they were relatable, even with superpowers.
He showed that girls could be all those things, and it resonated with audiences, like globally.
Oh, absolutely. And his use of color, design, especially in Powerpuff Girls. Bold, vibrant, instantly recognizable. Now, kind of switching gears a bit, gotta talk Avatar. The Last Airbender and The Legend of Korra.
Oh yeah, the Avatar universe. Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko. Talk about world building.
And long-form storytelling. They really raised the bar with Avatar. What I find fascinating is how they weave in Eastern philosophy and spirituality, like the whole bending the elements thing. It's not just a cool visual, it's tied to this deep understanding of Chai, the balance of nature.
Right. And they don't shy away from mature themes either.
Not at all. War, genocide, political corruption, it's all there, but they present it in a way that works for younger audiences, too.
It's amazing how they managed to balance that.
It really is. Avatar is a perfect example of how animation can tell these complex stories that still have this broad appeal, and the animation itself. Gorgeous.
Oh, it's stunning. Anime influences that cinematic scope.
Breathtaking. And the characters, you get so invested in their journeys, their struggles.
I mean, Zuko's redemption arc. Come on. One of the best in animation history.
For sure. DiMartino and Konietzko understand that good storytelling goes beyond just plot twists and action. It's about creating characters with depth, flaws, motivations, and that's what makes you connect with them.
You know, it's really hitting me now looking at this list. There's such a diversity of styles and approaches here. Satirical wit of Groening, visual poetry of Tartakovsky, whimsical worlds of Ward, emotional depth of Sugar.
It's really inspiring, isn't it?
It is, and it reminds you that animation is constantly evolving. There's always room for new voices, new ideas.
Absolutely. Endless possibilities. But you know what else is interesting? We've talked a lot about individual creators, but animation, it's a team effort.
Oh, for sure.
It's collaborative. Behind every great show, you've got this whole team of artists, writers, animators, voice actors.
All those people working together to bring that vision to life.
Exactly. And that's something to celebrate too, right? The power of collaboration, the shared passion. I mean, think about those incredible backgrounds in Avatar.
Or the sound effects in SpongeBob.
It takes a village, a symphony of talent. And speaking of talent, we can't forget the voice actors. They're the ones who bring these characters to life. The humor, the emotion, the personality.
The voice actors are crucial, and it's such a skill. like Tom Kenny, who voices both SpongeBob and the Ice King.
That's amazing. The range you need to pull that off.
It's mind-blowing. And when you think about how much animation is out there these days, it's clear that this industry is just full of talented people working their butts off behind the scenes.
It really is, and it shows the power of animation, how it continues to capture people's imaginations, no matter their age.
And I think it's important to keep that in mind as we continue to explore the work of these creators, that collaborative spirit. That's what drives animation forward.
I agree. But before we wrap up this whole deep dive, I want to circle back to something we touched on earlier, a legacy. These creators haven't just entertained us, they've inspired so many other artists. They've shaped how we think about animation as a whole.
They've pushed the boundaries of what animation can be in terms of story, in terms of visuals.
And their characters have become icons. We quote them, we wear their faces on t-shirts.
I mean, they inspire our own creativity.
It's really something. Shows how animation can touch our lives and stay with us long after we've finished watching.
So as we wrap things up, I want to pose a question to you, our listener. Out of all these amazing creators we've talked about, whose work has really stuck with you, and why? What is it about their style, their characters, their themes that keeps you coming back? It really is something, huh? How a cartoon can make you feel so much.
It's the power of animation, I think. Doesn't matter how old you are, where you're from, a good story, characters that feel real, it just connects with people.
It's true. And, thinking about all these creators, a lot of them didn't just, magically become successful. They worked at it. They experimented. They probably got rejected a few times.
Oh, absolutely. It's a process, right? Like, take Pendleton Ward. Before Adventure Time, he made this really weird student film called Panty and Stocking with Gartabelle. It was out there.
I've heard of it.
Definitely not for everyone, but even then you could see those early glimpses of his humor, his willingness to just push the boundaries of what animation could do.
It's a good reminder that everyone starts somewhere, right? You got to put your work out there, take the feedback, and keep honing your vision.
And that experimentation is so important for any artist, really. Finding your own style, your own way of telling stories. It's what makes your work unique.
It's what makes it yours. And I think that's what's so inspiring about this list. It's not just about who's at the top. It's about that creative journey.
It's about exploring, pushing yourself, and finding your voice.
And it's an indication, I think, to anyone out there who's ever thought about making their own cartoons.
Maybe you're not going to be the next Jendi Tartakovsky or Rebecca Sugar, but everyone's got a story to tell.
And maybe animation is the way to tell it.
Exactly. Could be short film, a web series, even just doodling in your sketchbook. There are so many ways to get creative with animation.
And the tools are out there now more than ever, right? You don't need a fancy studio or anything.
Not anymore. Who knows? Maybe someday we'll be doing a deep dive on your work.
That's the dream. Analyzing your style, talking about your impact on the world of animation.
Wouldn't that be something? But for now, we'll leave our listeners with a little assignment. We've talked about a lot of creators, a lot of shows today, so why not pick one you've never seen before and give it a watch?
You might discover your next favorite show.
And while you're watching, really pay attention to the details, the character designs, the colors, the music, the sound effects.
Think about the themes that creators exploring, the emotions they're trying to bring out.
Because that's the magic of animation, right? It's an art form that uses everything. Sight, sound, it pulls you into this whole other world.
A world of imagination, of possibility. And on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of cartoon creators. And until next time, keep those imaginations running wild.